What is Russia doing? That seems to be the question on everyone's mind ever since CIA Director Ratcliffe visited Moscow for a period of 4 hours to basically deliver a message of "We know what you're doing." What exactly is that? Now, the news media has come out to all but confirm what they are planning on doing, but again, that's just speculation. Anonymous sources, sources closer to the matter, that type of thing. So, quite literally, nobody really knows, and it's just left for wild speculation. So let's go ahead and speculate. First, everybody wants to compare this Ratcliffe visit to the one that CIA Director Burns made prior to the invasion back in February of 2022. If you recall, the CIA Director visited Moscow in November to basically deliver a message of "Do not invade Ukraine. We know what you're doing." Now, at that time, Moscow had no idea how the U.S. knew what their intentions were beyond, troop movements. We had intimate details, is my point, and it really irked Putin. He had no clue how we knew what we knew, and that has bothered him probably all the way up till now. So this could have been a potential try to source out the leak by having Ratcliffe visit them again, and then maybe that information Ratcliffe gave them, they're going to be able to find out how the U.S. knows what they know, and those are the details that, of course, the regular average Joe doesn't know. And I'm here to tell you that's just not going to work. There's just no way that Putin's ever going to figure out how the U.S. government knows what they know. That said, the current situation mirrors but is not identical to what happened in 2021, 2022. For instance, there is no mass Russian invasion getting ready to occur of any kind of NATO territory. During the November visit, there was already 100,000 Russian troops on the controlled border between Russia and Ukraine, and then that leapt up to almost 200,000 come February. And we don't have any kind of mass mobilization of Russian troops like that. But speaking of mobilizations, Zelensky came out recently and said that after the elections at the end of September in Russia, that Putin plans on calling up 300,000 reservists into service. And so these small pieces are starting to fall into place, just not in the same order. So that begs the question, if Russia escalates, what are they going to escalate? Are they going to escalate an internal push in through Ukraine to capture more territory, to maybe even end the war and then take all of Ukraine? That certainly is a possibility, but again, those troops are going to have to materialize. On top of that, some indicators that that might be the case is that Russia is producing and calling on purchasing more missiles and drones now more than ever before. So you're going to want to have that consistent aerial bombardment while you move your troops closer to the objectives that you're trying to seize. And so he is possibly preparing for that. But the U.S. and NATO fear that he is actually going to take a NATO territory and to see test the resolve of NATO. While that is a possibility, that is a very minor possibility that is unlikely to occur, just given the current state of the Russian affairs. They simply would not be able to sustain kind of a two-front war, if you will, because at that point it would require NATO to actually act. And maybe that was the warning, though, that Ratcliffe delivered, saying, "Hey, if you do this, we will respond in kind. We won't, conduct an Article 5, maybe, but we will do an Article 4, and we will absolutely prosecute any targets on the ground, much like we did in Syria of 2018." It could be some sort of combination of that. Regardless, though, there are indications that NATO believes that might be the case, just given the surprise exercises they flew with their doomsday planes and the increased activity of NATO forces around the Baltics would suggest that is a valid fear. That doesn't, again, mean that war would occur if Russia did that, but they are definitely pushing the envelope. What could potentially happen is Russia seizes a piece of ground, and then NATO basically gives them a warning saying, if you don't remove your troops by such and such time, we will be forced to remove them for you. We won't consider this an act of war, though, but we will absolutely reset the boundaries, the borders back to the way they should be. But that really pushes it to the brink. So that's why I highly doubt that is going to occur, because Russia could not stand that type of pressure. But what they could do is what I said earlier, which is increase escalation in Ukraine to hopefully, or to the point of maybe ending the war or seizing more territory. Regardless, all the tea leaves, all the indicators are there for something to escalate. And when exactly that'll occur will be sometime probably between September and spring of next year. But a few more things will have to develop for any of this to actually materialize and be real, like the troop call up, for example. So we'll just have to wait and see, but there's nothing that's going to happen today or tomorrow or this week. Oh, just one more thing. Let's just say that Russia does do a massive escalation into Ukraine. Our standard response will be to stand to and bring our forces to bear at the border to just show a defensive resolve. And so that is also something that we practice, and that could be something that you're seeing in the news as well. That doesn't mean that we're actually going to be, on the brink of war with Russia if they decide to push further into Ukraine in some sort of massive scale, but it does show that, hey, we're ready to receive all your strays, all your BS that you're throwing at the border accidentally, and so that could be another part of the message. And so yeah, that was just an additional thought.